doing this screening. I'm just doing the discussion. So
Okay, we should be seeing PA Envirothon, right?
yep, excellent, excellent. All right, here. Well, first of all, good morning, everybody. Uh, Here in Columbia County, we're not as cold as Dave is there in Bradford, but we're glad everybody's on today. Just a little history. Most of you guys do know me, but there's a couple that may not. Colorado High School graduate, 1987. Went to Penn State, graduated in 91 with a degree in ag and extension education. Left there and started right away at Central Columbia. 29 years later, still there. And we've kind of grown that program. And environmental was one of the groups that we knew we wanted to grow into. And so that's what we've done. Had great success at the Envirothon, not only at the local level, but also regionally and fairly well at states as well. So just want to kind of start out with the Envirothon just a little bit. Just so you give a little other background information, we do have a forest science class that is the first 9 weeks, and then a wildlife science class, which is the second 9 weeks, making up the first semester. So there is a little bit of crossover, and that's a science credit, by the way, through the ag department. Also, I team teach with one of our bio teachers, environmental science, which that's what this whole course, environmental science, is based off of, is the Envirothon. And that's kind of what I wanted to show you. So if you guys are familiar with the Envirothon, I apologize for just a couple of minutes, and then we'll take you to the Pennsylvania Game Commission's website, and we'll kind of go from there. And you guys can chime in at any time. I'm just going to, Beth and John just kind of asked me to assist her a little bit. That's kind of what I'm going to do, just from the experiences that we've seen and what we've done. So first of all, we're going to start off with station training right there in the middle. So if John wants to click on station, and we're going to go on to wildlife. So when you go in the wildlife section, we're just going to concentrate on wildlife today. Next Thursday morning, we're going to concentrate on aquatics with the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission. So if aquatics is more up your alley, that's going to be next Thursday morning. Today, we're going to concentrate a lot on wildlife, that type of aspect, and we're going to kind of go from there. That's one of the sections of the Envirothon. It ends up being forestry, aquatics, soils, wildlife, and the current issue. The current issue is always changing each year. Now, I've asked Laurel Streck, who's the director of the Pennsylvania Envirothon, are we staying with the current issue for next year, seeing that we never addressed that? I think we might have talked a little bit about that last week. And she said she's not sure yet. It's up to the National Envirothon what avenue they wanted to go. And I strongly urge them to stay with the current issue, because we've never even addressed that issue. We never got that far. So, which was on water quality, water sustainability, local control, local solutions. So hopefully they stay with that. But each of these has an essential topic. So John, if you want to click on essential topic. And I don't know what all you guys are into, but we're an LFS school. Questions, all our word walls, vocab. Of course, we also touch on part of our NOCD, obviously, is this as well. So we post all the task sheets so everybody can see those type of things. But this gives you an idea, an overflow, and an overview of what the Envirothon wanted to touch on, what they thought was important from industry and from education to post-secondary level. That's what drives the Envirothon. So you want to go to the next tag, John, which is learning objectives. Yep. So the learning objective is going to give you where all of your state standards fall, from science and technology to environment, ecology, and that aspect, as well as a little bit of math in there as well. So you can see the standards down there posted at the bottom, so you don't have to go recreate these at any means. So they're all sitting there ready to go for you. So if you have to post those in your lessons or on a word wall somewhere or whatever, they're there for you. And you can see all the objectives that they want to hit. And you guys, I don't want to take any of their time doing that. So you can scroll down through that at your own leisure. The next two pieces are the real important parts. Reference materials list. And a lot of things I gave John and Beth were from this particular area. And the first one we're going to talk about, and one of the things that we do with our kids, is right there, number 4, the 2019-2020 Pennsylvania Digest for Hunting and Trapping. So my co-partner, well, was-be co-partner, who's now going to cooperative education to be our director, Kurt Turner. Kurt is our hunter ed instructor here at Central Columbia. But one of the things in the Envirothon, one ends up having this a big document, so as it loads up, a lot of color to it as well. One of the things that we do is we work together, obviously, but we'll be replacing Kurt here in the middle of May with a new person in his position. But one of the things that the Envirothon does is touches on the hunting and trapping laws, regulations, bag limits, things of those sorts. And some of the kids that we see in environmental surprisingly may not be a fisherman or a hunter or a trapper. So they're unaware. And there's a lot of times laws are in the Envirothon. So one of the things that we developed, and I gave this to John and Beth, is that we developed a worksheet, 3 or 4 page worksheet that goes along with the digest each year. And what it does is it goes through and forces the kids to go through the digest and find the answers related to what's the bag limit on a coyote, what's a hunting season for a black bear. They may have never seen this ever. And a number of times the Susquehanna Valley Envirothon, which our Envirothon is a regional Envirothon between 5 and 6 counties. And they ask them different questions related to that. Now, if you're familiar with the Envirothon, you know that the stations at the county level and regional level, if you have one, are very short. We're talking 20, 23 minutes. The state level, we're more around 40 minutes for a station, but a lot of advertisements and that type of thing. That's great. But just the whole idea of game laws, fluorescent orange requirements. And each year, the Envirothon updates this with the Game Commission, obviously. Game Commission just put into play, beginning of this month, the new rules and regs for this upcoming hunting season. Of course, the big one now is Sunday hunting for white-tailed deer. And of course, last year's start of the season was on Saturday. So just different things like that. But you can see as John scrolls down through here, what are some rules and regulations? There's a lot of stuff. You don't need to know every single one of those, but the one right here, Johnny, stop right there for a minute. The fluorescent orange requirements was a tag all by itself this year, which was the first time I've ever seen that at the Envirothon. Really concentrating on what fluorescent orange requirements are there for different seasons. And to be honest with you, most kids don't know that. They know it's 250 square inches, but what's that look like? Well, there's a good picture of what 250 square inches looks like. It's a hat and a vest. What's it mean if it's visible? Those type of things. So it gives you those ideas. Then we talk about blinds a little bit, and everybody thinks, oh, you just pop up a blind, it's bad weather, and I can hunt from it. True, but not true, because you got to have a 100 square inch band of fluorescent orange posting your blind. And these are types of rules that the Envirothon asks about. So this is one of the categories that they looked at. And then, of course, the hunting tables and on and on and on and on. So there's 64 pages in the digest that you want to keep, I don't want to say students busy, but you want to really educate them about hunter law and trapping law. That's what we developed is that packet that relates to this particular aspect. And John and Beth have that, and they can push that out to you if they already have it. So that's the first page of the digest. So lots of things there with the digest. You want to go back then, John, to the Envirothon website again. So there you can see the fluorescent orange requirements right there by John's cursor. And they were concentrating on that. Yep. And then they were talking about, these are the specialty areas. This changes every year. So wildlife classifications, state game law regulations. What is a state game law? Why do state game laws exist? Why do state game lands exist? And then the mentor hunting program, that changed for next year. That's brand new. They've opened that up a little bit wider. It's a little bit more general than what it was. And then the Game Commission, well, the Envirothon with the Game Commission gets into diseases, and CWD has been around for a while. Of course, we all know that chronic wasting disease is a cervidid animal disease affecting our split hoof animals, that being in Pennsylvania, only the elk and white-tailed deer. Now, if you have red deer, like we have a red deer farm here in southern Columbia County, it affects them, and of course it affects the moose. But that's a disease that we're really afraid of, which started in Wisconsin and Michigan through obviously every other invasive species that came through in disease. That's kind of where it came from. So the new one up is the mourning dove. We always do, Kirk C. Schultz is one of our bio teachers, and that's who I teach with. We always do a section on feathers. And I'm going to show you a thing on the Game Commission's website today on feathers, but there's a brand new thing on mourning dove banding. If you want the kids to go through, that's a really great video. We did it right before we broke. They talk about, yep, there you go. Talks about the different parts of the feather. I've never seen this at our regional Envirothon, but I've seen it numerous times at our state Envirothon, where the kids have to identify a bird related to the feather, and there would be an example. And it takes you through a dichotomous key. Wow. The kids are shocked when they come in environmental science. There's a dichotomous key for trees, dichotomous key for aquatic species, dichotomous key for soils, dichotomous key for wildlife. And they have no clue what those are. So we take them through each of the dichotomous keys, which is really great. And this one was on bird molting. And if you want to scroll up a little bit, John, can you go up the end of that? Yeah, go the other way. There's a third right there, yep. Molt A, Molt 0, and then Molt U. I never even knew this existed. So after 29 years and being 51 years old, not even sure that I even knew what this was. So I was actually learning, I didn't let them know that, but I was actually learning it with them, what this particular was. So we go back, John, the video, and you don't have to show the video, but the dove banding video is really good, really good. The Game Commission does it. They do a great job of aging animals. How do you know when a bird, how old it is? How old is it going to be when it molts? When's it going to molt? I learned a lot from that video, and it's not real long either. It's like 15, 20 minutes. So again, fitting it into a remote learning situation, there's a great avenue. Even if you have captive birds or pets as birds, it's something else you can do as well. So it relates to that. The other ones I've shared with John and Beth are the aging of deer bones. This is always gets a great video right there. Actually had our kids do this 2 weeks ago. Just how do we do it? We were right in the middle of this when we broke. We actually go through different types of teeth. So we talk about ICPM, incisors, canines, premolars, and molars. And then we talk about how to age animals. It's just some interest I took when I was in high school. How old's that deer? I don't know why I took an interest in it, but I did. And I've just kind of learned how to age deer. And it's kind of a unique management tool that you can use, that the Game Commission uses as well when they reset the antler restrictions 10, 12 years ago, when Gary Alt did that research with Penn State and why we do what we have to do. You know, the average deer at that point was 3.5 years old getting harvested, and we weren't getting very big. And now obviously that's changed. And this is a great depictor that the Game Commission uses, but also the Envirothon uses, and you can use very easily in class to have the kids figure out how old that deer is. And what I did is I went out to a local butcher who was on our advisory council, and his nephews have all come through our program. And they obviously butchered deer, well, they did, and harvested deer, excuse me, I guess that's the correct terminology today. And what they do is I had them pull all the jaw bones off, and we got them. And what I did is I boiled them down, and then I bleached them. And then we have an old dishwasher at school. Dave knows that, he's been in our program, in our food science lab. And I fill it with basically dishwasher detergent, believe it or not, and I wash them. And they come out perfectly clean, and you can use them. So it's something that you can have for a long time. If you want to put some type of spray sealant on them, you could. I haven't. They've been fine. And then, of course, once in a while, you'll have to update your inventory because those jaws will obviously get dried out, and then the teeth fall out. And kind of like that thing. But you could talk about that too. Why do they do that? And we talk about the root of the tooth. We talk about the tooth itself, parts of the tooth, the dentine, the enamel, the root. We talk about root canals in class. Why, if everybody got a root canal, what's a cavity? And we talk about that and how deer wear away their gum line because they're an herbivore and they're constantly grinding. So if you have a student that grinds their teeth at night, they could probably relate to that, or they brush their teeth too hard, they're wearing away their gum line, which will never be recreated. So we talk about that kind of as it relates to human health as well. So it's kind of interesting, but we do a deer aging activity. We can keep going there, John, on that, on the website there. And then they talk about the diseases. And that video, by the way, is really good, folks, on that YouTube video from the Deer Aging for the Game Commission. They do a great job. EHD and chronic wasting disease, West Nile virus, all aspects to that. Great ideas, great videos out there that unfortunately affect all of us in Pennsylvania. So this isn't something that we try to go out to Wisconsin or Texas or California and talk about wildlife out there. There's so much to talk about in Pennsylvania. We don't even worry about other states at this point. And then a few years back, the Envirothon at the state level asked us, hey, what do you think about the profiles? And from an educator side, we said, too much. So a few years back, they started recreating what they call wildlife profiles. And what they do is they pick different animals each year to be depicted, either be through a picture, a replica, a decoy, their pelt, a sign, a wildlife sign, their scat, their tracks, songs, things. And these are the ones they chose for this year. Canada goose, white-tailed deer. And what I did last week and I did last night for John and Beth is I provided them the worksheets that go along with each of those. So John, if you want to touch on the Canada goose link, if you could. This will bring us up to the wildlife note. Every species in the state of Pennsylvania has a wildlife note. Some of them are really been updated, like this one has been updated. You can see it was revised in 15. Some of them haven't been revised for years. And what we do is we have the students go through those select species in class. If it's not on the list, I'm not worried about it for this year. But there's enough to worry about, from scientific naming to reproduction to habitat development and all that. And what we have them do is go through the worksheet and find the answers to those. It is a little bit time consuming, that's for sure. But it preps them for the Envirothon and obviously our environmental science test that we provide them at the end of the unit. And the Envirothon does a great job of trying to dig as deep as they can to make sure that there's a separator between teams. And they'll find any little line in these wildlife notes to do that. And our wildlife note package that, again, I sent to John and Beth, goes through all those. And it's a great remote learning process. If you're really struggling for something for use there, remote learning, you can have them do that. And I've done a few of these. We've done 5 of them so far in our remote learning. We started remote learning at Central Columbia on March 16th. So think about that. It was Friday when we got let go, and we started right away on Monday. We're a one-on-one school. Our kids have iPads they take home, so they're very familiar with it. Our platform is Google Classroom, so that's where all our stuff gets stored. We did use eBackpack for a while, just to give you some background knowledge. But our kids are very apt with a lot of the apps that are out there with GoFormative. So the other thing that I use with GoFormative is that I will take pictures of these species and then we do IDs. So they take a quiz on GoFormative on that app. And again, that could be another remote learning tool you use to go over the species, but then you can quiz them on it as well, and it'll grade it for you. So again, another great avenue as we talk about remote learning. So each of these species that are highlighted has a wildlife note sheet that goes with it. And that's what I've given to John and Beth. All right, John, we could go back to the website. The mammal sounds, not to promote Kurt Turner or anything, but he's a Cornell grad, but Cornell does do a great job with the ornithology part. This is where we get all of our mammal sounds. It's where we get all of our bird calls. I've used the Identiflyer myself, and so is the Envirothon. But this particular website does a great job. Kirk Seaschultz, our bio teacher, he's in charge of this. He does all the photos and sounds. And you can see there was even quizzes there. If you go back, John, yep. Photos and sound quizzes that they have there from eBird if you want to do that. We actually create our own. We download the video, we download the sound, we download the photo, and we put it into our own platform. And that's what he does for us. But there's lots of information on this particular website for sure that Cornell's put together. This is the Macaulay Library that Cornell runs, but the Cornell Ornithology Lab does a great job as well. So I would highly recommend looking at the Cornell lab there. They do a great job. And if we scroll down, animal tracks, obviously, each year the Envirothon does tracks. And there's a thing called iTrack. That's an app that the kids could put on their phone. Right there, yep. And what it does, it allows them to have different tracks. Now, years ago, what I've done over the years is I've bought rubber tracks, molds from Acorn Naturalist. Phenomenal resource, California. They do a great job, and we've gotten almost every track that they have. And I put those into a PowerPoint, and I'm still trying to get that on Google Docs for John and Beth so everybody can have that copy. It's on a PowerPoint that I put together through this remote learning. One of the things I have learned that after 29 years, you can learn new tricks. I told Marty Heiler this the other day, old dogs can learn new tricks. So we've done some different things I wouldn't have been able to do if we weren't remotely doing it and out of school just because of lack of time. And we're all in this situation as I look at the people that are on with us today. So that's another great avenue, Animal Tracks, Acorn Naturalist, and that app, iTrack Wildlife. And then the last one is the learning enhancements. This is specific each year. And Dan Lynch, former Ag Ed major, year before I graduated, 1986, taught about 2 or 3 years at Kutztown. But Dan always had the dream of going with the Game Commission, and he did. He's down there in the Kutztown area, and he and Cheryl Twilla started the Pennsylvania Wildlife Forensics team. And if you've ever had those guys out to do an activity or workshop with you, great. If you haven't, when we get back to normalness here a little bit, have Dan and Cheryl come out for you. They do a great job in wildlife forensics. I'm just talking to the kids about, do you have, what is in wildlife forensics? We have a transfer kid from Hazleton. She's a junior now, but she has an interest in wildlife forensics and just over pathology, animal pathology. And wow, we talk about viruses and things. And wow, how does that go and play with what she wants to do? So we really hit it with her really well. But these videos are all done professionally. Dan Lynch is the narrator, and he takes you through each of the videos and tricks and tips of the trade on identifying these species. And you could have the kids watch those videos as well. So that kind of gives you just the wildlife section of the Envirothon. So at this point, anybody have any questions about that website to myself or anybody? Okay. If we didn't, then Dan or John, we can go to the Game Commission's website then. Perfect. So if we go into, I'm going to kind of go with you here. So we go into wildlife, the tag at the top up there, and you go to wildlife species. There is a lot of information on this website, folks. The Game Commission does a great job in putting this item together educationally. So what they do is you can go ahead and scroll up, John. What they end up doing is each one of those animals where it says the Pennsylvania Mammal Atlas, you want to click on that, John? What we've done, while that loads up real quick, what we've done in order to get public speaking involved, because if some of these kids that we see are environmentalists, so what they want to do is they want to go out and they want to be a naturalist for PPL, or they want to be a naturalist for Shavers Creek Environmental Center, or whatever it is. What we do is we have them as a requirement. This could be another great remote learning tool. And I had them turn their wildlife posters into me yesterday. So there's 4 ways to do that. each kid gets assigned, or they choose, I should say, a wildlife species that they're going to do their research on. Research going to be a general profile, going to be a photo, reproductive, habitat requirements. And they put it on a poster and then they present it. If we were in a normal situation, they would present that to the class. And then the class would, at the same point in time, jot down 2 interesting facts from that person's presentation, so that they're just not sitting there watching. They're actually active with it as well. And then Mr. Seaschultz and myself asked them particular questions about their poster. Well, how the heck do you do that remotely? So what I had the kids do is present it at home. They saved it to their iPad. They created either a YouTube link that I watched, or they created an audio voice thread with their iPad, and they showed me the poster, and then I saved that on my computer, and then they voiced over that related to their poster, or they created an iMovie. All different technologies that could be used. We used all of them. We have 30 kids in that class, and they all did it differently. I told them, I said, it doesn't bother me how you do it. There's a lot of ways to skin a buck, so go for it. So this is just one of those sites where it talks about where all the different animals are, what they're linked to. So each of our kids, again, does a poster. Again, another remote learning, great tool that you could use just for the wildlife aspect. And they can go find the information. Let them do a little research. It's okay. These kids are high schoolers. Some of these kids, are going to go to this as a post-secondary level. So they need to be a little bit independent here. My wife teaches 3rd grade, and every day they do a lot of stuff with them. We have not done a lot of Zoom. And the reason we haven't done a lot of Zoom is because of internet issues. 1, 2, just trying to get all the kids on the same page at the same time. Easier said than done. So I don't want to say waste time, but I didn't want to use a lot of time that way to do it. So we did not do a lot of Zoom. We have not done a lot of Zoom that way. So we go from there. All right, John. So I want to talk a little bit about, the wildlife species. I wanted to show you that. A great resource there. You can go back up to the main website then, John. Yep. So if we go back up to wildlife, and you could talk about the additional resources, threatened and endangered species. I sent John and Beth a worksheet that we do, have the kids forcing them to go in and go into threatened and endangered species, find out about them, what they are, those type of things as well. So it gives you that list. And this gives you a list down. Go ahead, you go up, John. You go all the way to the bottom of that page. I don't think that, yeah, there you go. It gives you a list of all those animals alphabetically. And I think I gave that to John and Beth as well. It gives an animal, so you could actually give that to the kid, and they could kind of see which ones. You could highlight the ones for them and that are going to be in this year's Envirothon, or, these are all Pennsylvania animals, so it really doesn't matter which one they choose. If you want to stay with this year's Envirothon, you could. Obviously, this year's Envirothon has been canceled, but at least gives you that idea. Or for next year. And they'll post these usually late July, early August. They update the species in which they're going to do for the next year. So now we can stay on that tag, John, if you want to go up to wildlife again. Go all the way up to the green. Yep, there you go. So you can go down to the threatened and endangered down there at the bottom. Yep. And you could talk to the kids about what is threatened, what's endangered, what's extinct, what's extirpated, all these types of terms. They have no clue. So it gives them an idea of what you could do that way. And these are all the species, and you could have them do research on those as well. Kids love to make videos, and they don't have to be very long, but they love to do that. So again, you could have a remote learning tool, have them go in, research it, and then do a little 3-4 minute presentation on that. It's going to take them a day to do that with other classes. So we've been instructed here at Central Columbia, we're 30 minutes with remote learning, 30 minutes each day, each class. That's what we're required to do. So you could talk about recovery species, of course, extirpated meaning that they were present and now they're no longer in that area. Pennsylvania elk being a great example of that. Extirpated species that obviously not any longer, but was one back in the day. Those type of things you can look at. Of course, you could talk about the Endangered Species Act. I don't know if I gave that to John and Beth. I'm not sure I would spend a lot of time on that. Just let them know what it is. It's a pretty long document. Talk about the legal aspects, the national and federal laws that come into play with the Endangered Species Act. And then if you have younger kids, there's a kids corner, the Endangered Species Kids Corner. And if you have your own young kids at home, I gave this to my sister. She has 4 little ones at home. So I gave that to her, and it was great information that they can have as well right there. Yep. So there's a lot of information that way relates to it. Of course, next week we'll talk about Fish and Boat Commission and what they do with the aquatics as well. But all right, John, we can go up to hunting and trapping then. Then again, the digest and all the laws that play into place. Maybe the kids don't even know that they have to report a harvest. So you want to go down to that, John, for a minute. So you could actually have the kids do a mock report harvest if you wanted to. They have to report antlered deer, wild turkey, things of those sorts. And we talk about why do they have to do that. The Game Commission sets their bag limits based off of the last 10 years. So when all these wildlife management units were created, they were created well because each unit should be managed differently. How Dave Seinfeld is up there in Bradford County is going to be way different than what I have in Columbia County, just in habitat and species and all that type of thing. So it gives you an idea of you could actually do if you're looking to do something with reporting, you could do a remote learning tool with deer harvest, and have them actually do a report to you. Gives you an idea. So just something different. Just going to give you some ideas here. So you can go back up to education then, John. And this is the one that's kind of really out there. If you go down to Visit Middle Creek, this is the one that's phenomenal. It's all the stuff that John and Beth have that I download over the last, there's a cedar waxwing, but you can have them ID, but the Visitor Center Middle Creek obviously is closed, but they have virtual tours that you can take. And if you go into all these different aspects that are there, from all these links that are there, and you can keep going, John. Yeah, all these, there's a self-driving tour and there's an audio tour. So if you're looking for something different for these kids to look at, they go through on their own pace. Hiking maps and things, you can go ahead. And there's a whole self-directed curriculum for us K to 12 up there. So John, if you want to check on that. This whole aspect over here, and this is what I gave. And can we pull up the one, John? Feet are neat. These are really cool. And you can relate them to young kids, older kids. It doesn't matter. I've even used them in adult presentations with the conservation district. So, but each one of these has information with it. They're self-directed, remote learning, great tool. Why create the wheel? Years ago, folks told me, don't invent the wheel, right? It's already been invented. Just make it work for you. And that's what this does. So that gives you all the tech, but this one's on feet are neat. Gives you a little idea, you know, how the different feet of birds, songbirds, game birds, birds of prey are all situated. And there's actually an activity there that they could do. You can scroll up, John. And it talks a little about parts of the animal. So you could give them a quiz on the different parts of the animal. We do this in our environmental science class, different pieces that make that bird up. Again, we do this with our feathers section when we do birding. Can we go ahead and slide up, John? And just it gives you a little bit of background, some knowledge. What are all the different birds? Swimmers, to runners, to scratchers, to waders. Kids have no clue. They're like, I don't know. You know, our mascot's a blue jay, so which one is he? And we have the kids figure that out, right? So, as you go in there and have them figure that out, and then you keep going up, and you could do a little bit of extended learning activities there with them. They could actually go out because they're at home. They could go out now that birds are back, migratory species are back, have them go out and see if they can find tracks or do some birding and actually have them try to identify some birds and have them report back to you. Just something different to get them out of the house a little bit when the weather's okay. And again, this just gives you a little bit more aspect on just different types of bird biology. So again, you're talking about that science connection to what we're talking about. Here you go. It's going to be on that Keystone exam when they take that. And then here's the activity. They could go out and do this. Of course, that can get inverted, but you guys can do that on your own. But it gives them that idea. You could assign them the bird. They could choose the bird, whatever it may be, and then just go out and where's it actually fit, right? And then you could actually have a Zoom session if you wanted to, or record yourself in a lesson and post that to YouTube or however you want to do it. Talking about each of those different birds and why they exist the way they do. So something different. Some you don't have to recreate. It's all there. It's pretty extensive. So they're talking about that one. They're talking about songbirds, screech owls, turkey vulture, and Canada goose. So different ones that they've created. And that's Feed or Neat. And each one of those Middle Creek self-guided curriculums, they do one on skulls. They do one on scatology. So scat. They do one on tracks. That is a really cool item that fits really well in the world that we're living in right now. So that gives you some aspect to that as well. And then the other aspect of it is that each one of these have videos that go with them. So John, if we want to go back, so you can see all the ones, nose, decoy detectives, and we can slide up a little bit. A lot of these guys have videos. You want the kids to understand the Game Commission, the history of wildlife management in Pennsylvania. You got some videos that can go along with that. The one with the recreation and restoration of the bald eagle, great video. We've shown that for many years. The elk, celebrating 100 years just a couple years ago of the elk in Pennsylvania. Lots of good videos there for sure. And then of course there's the kids corner. If you just want to touch on, I don't know, let's go to you can go to the Pennsylvania Wildlife video one then, John. Down near the bottom, yeah. If we're looking for videos, so we don't have to be the ones doing all the discussion all the time, and just looking something to break up the monotony. Some of these videos, this is a little leader. This one talks a little bit about connecting you with wildlife, but they're all different. The Game Commission does one. Some of them could be a minute, but if you look over on the side, wow, there's videos just talk about different snakes. And I just watched one before I got on the tame grouse. Lisa, I forget her last name. She does a great job. She's the head biologist for wildlife for ruffed grouse in the state of Pennsylvania. And talk about why does tame grouse occur in the springtime and things like that. So really cool videos that the Game Commission has done. And maybe you've never known that they even existed because you didn't have time to go find them. Killdeer there and red fox and heron and all. So it gives you really great information about species that are in Pennsylvania. So many times when you Google and do YouTube searches, it ends up by you not Pennsylvania. And it's like, so what? Big deal. So this gives us an idea. It's all related to what we do. That was just their promo, but each video has it in it. They've got ones on white nose syndrome. They have them on for bats, obviously. They have them on CWD. They take you a tour of the Elk Center. There's a lot of videos out there. So it gives you Prescott Island and Erie, takes you to the area down in Harrisburg on the island. So lots of different videos that are search out there. I just want to show you that there's a lot of videos that the Game Commission has that's out there that you can use for sure. And then the live cams. If you go back to, John, you could go back a little bit. You can go to the live cams. Go to Can You Tell Me? Can you tell? This is a unique thing. Game Commission did this with a Envirothon a couple years ago. Threw us totally off. This was one of those sheets we had at the regional Envirothon. If you want to scroll up, John, they had the kids tell you what species those were. Something you can do remotely, right? And then of course there's the answers to them. But you could, copy that and paste that in and do a little bit of remote learning that way as well. So something just to keep the kids thinking, about what is this species for ID purposes? What do they actually look like? So they actually had those 8 questions at our regional Envirothon, 6-7 years ago. So this is something different that you could use without recreating a wheel. That's for sure. So, and then of course all the webcams. the American Kestrel cam down in Harrisburg, the bald eagle cams that they have all throughout Pennsylvania. Of course, the live cams that they have. So if you go to the Pennsylvania web, if you go to Pennsylvania Game Commission, scroll up, John. The Pennsylvania Elk, yep. Whoop, down a little bit. Yep, Pennsylvania Elk web page. Down at the bottom of that section, John. Yep. So here it gives you just on Pennsylvania Elk. So elk viewing and when you can do it, but the camera's live. So you can do public events. They started to do some remote things over at Benezet at the Elk Center. There's actually an elk station map where they actually get the map where you could check in your elk, obviously, once you harvest it. Why does the elk season exist the way it does? A lot of videos on the elk, brochures, different types of things. So there's the live stream on the Pennsylvania elk. You scroll down a little bit, John. That's just on a, yeah, that video's on camera, but you can see the down there the live streaming that they have from the center. They have one on bald eagles. They have them on the kestrel. Lots of different factors there. So lots of videos there for sure, for sure. So something else I wanted to show you here today. So that gives you, and you guys can kind of play around with that. The other thing we want to show you if you go into education, John, is the Pennsylvania Game News. I don't know if it's in that section. Next one over, John. I can't see the next section. So Pennsylvania Game News in there. Yep, there you go. Want to have some kids do some learning, and we talk about English. They could do small reports or read and without you recreating, a quiz or something for them, right? They could go in and look at different articles that have been posted over time. If you were unaware that we have any younger teachers on, if you were unaware, if you contact your land manager or your, the term back again, game warden, we went away from wildlife conservation officer, now we're back to the game warden. You can get them to actually get you a free subscription to the school each month. And we've done that. We've have every subscription, I think, of the game news that over the last 5 years or so. So a lot of information that we use that way as well. So again, if you're looking for the kids to do just some fun, different read articles or some up-to-date research, the Game Commission has developed the game news online. So that's a great resource as well. So John, if you want to go back to the Middle Creek thing for a minute, I think it was underneath education. Yep. Visit Middle Creek. We can scroll up there just a little bit. We'll go back to that self-directed curriculum. If you're looking for something just to start with, I think this is where I would start. You can go to let's go to Scatology. Just the idea of IDing different scat that's out there. This does a pretty nice job of it. Again, these are all self-directed tools, obviously free. If your email's like my email, you're getting about 4 or 5 companies. Hey, we can provide you this, we provide you that for the short period of time. I haven't bought into any of those, obviously. There's a lot of resources out there for us. So this gives you an idea. This one, again, is ready for you to use right now. And again, directing it from Scat ID. I did it in a lot of activities. I did my own video on Scat. I did a bunch of PowerPoint presentations to our kids on Scat. You're talking about maybe you even have them develop it. Maybe they have Play-Doh at home, or I don't know, or whatever. They could actually develop their own Scat related to that. And they can kind of, there's a recipe to make their own oatmeal. Maybe something cool for younger kids. I don't know. Give you an activity there. But here's we're talking more about what we're talking about in the ideas of our age kids. We're talking about is a herbivore, carnivore, and omnivore. And you could talk about different scat. Herbivores always have that pellety type look. Carnivores are going to have that, that real long, like the fox does there. And then omnivores are going to be tubular. So just different ideas and, what they're looking for. And they could actually take the kids out. They could go out on their own around their house, or if they live next to the woods or something, put their tick spray on and go out and do a little investigation, and they can do a report back to you. Again, something different that isn't just sitting there. I shouldn't say it this way. Oh, there's no math teachers on, just doing math problems every hour, every day, all day long, right? Gets them out and about a little bit, creating some things. Maybe they have younger brothers and sisters that they could work with a little bit here. Maybe a little cooperative learning. Maybe they do a little teaching too. So maybe we have ag teachers that in the making. I don't know, maybe. So gives them that idea, and they even have edible ones. So there you go. So it's kind of a cool thing, just breaking up the monotony of remote learning. I thought it was kind of a cool site, but then it gives you the breakdown of what this is. Again, kind of most kids think, oh, it's gross, you know. And we've purchased all the scat from Acorn Naturalists that are done professionally in molds. But here again, wow, what a great activity. It could go over a couple days. You know, our administration talked about, you know, these lessons don't have to be one day every day. They could be over a couple days, 2 or 3 days maybe. Here's a great activity that could do that. So lots of different activities, John. That's kind of what I just wanted to show today. Hopefully we didn't bore everybody to death here, but there's so many resources out there, and if you didn't know they were out there, right, now you do. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Doug. That, like in all reality, that's everything that you could possibly need for the remainder of this school year to teach wildlife or environmental resources, or we didn't touch too much on forestry, but that's perfectly fine. But if you teach a straight up wildlife class, Doug has shared everything that you could possibly need to finish out this year remotely, without a doubt. So that is awesome stuff. Look like great resources. So thanks
John,
again for that, Doug.
One of the things that we want to do next week in the morning, we want to talk a little bit about aquatics. And I thought maybe the following week we'd do the forestry section. You want to do that?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, we kind of plan this out a little bit. And then maybe the week after we could possibly do some current issue stuff. So what we've done
Sure.
current issue. So, yep.
All right.
Anybody have any
So
questions? Any questions
yeah,
for me? That
open it up. What are
hasn't
some
worked?
specific situational challenges you're facing? Any questions for Doug, you know, about specifically how he utilized any of those resources with his students, about maybe how he's utilized some of these digitally, or anything else for the good of the group that you'd like to put out there?
Hey, Doug, are you having a lot of kids that are having trouble to get videos logged in depending on where they're at and doing that kind of stuff? And how do you work with that?
Yeah, one of the problems I didn't, all our kids are YouTube channeled because they have their own YouTube channel through the school. And that's what I do too. The problem I found out is that sometimes YouTube, because it's through the school, locks them out, denies them access. It's not every kid. And I don't know why. I'm not a tech guy, so I don't know why it does it with some and now with others. So that's why I provided them the idea that, how about you try an iMovie and send it to me, or do a voice thread and send me the poster and then voice it over. That was perfect. And I could send you a couple examples of what I did. Some of our better kids, what they did a great job. And they said it was really fun doing it too. So it's just something different, but yeah, a little bit of issue with YouTube. I'm not quite sure why, because I've had no issues with YouTube, but again, being a teacher, they probably opened it up to me, but it's only sporadic kids. Not every kid had that issue, but we worked around it. We came up with some different forms. Google Classroom, if any of you guys are in Google Classroom is, for us, is not very user friendly when it comes to video. It doesn't want to take it or doesn't want to load it. So I've stayed away from videos with Google Classroom. I've stayed away from it. Our other teachers have tried it, had some trouble, so I stayed away from it. So, yep. Now them viewing videos, Dave, that's never been a problem. Obviously they don't have internet issue. That's an issue, right? Problem. But creating their own video and sending it back to me, there was ways around it, and we worked around that. So we worked it out. Brandon, anything there that you could possibly use getting started?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's all kinds of cool things there. You said you teach all this in a wildlife and forestry class, and it is a science credit too.
Say that again.
So that class you teach all this, they get a science credit out of this.
Yeah, the forest science class are the first 9 weeks, and the wildlife science class, second 9 weeks, that's one semester course. That's a half a credit science. But then environmental science is a full year, different class, all year, one full science credit, correct? Yep. And that environmental science course relates itself to the Envirothon only. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Yep. So what a great way to get involved, not only with the Envirothon, but also with your conservation district. Trout Unlimited, Ducks Unlimited, Pheasants Forever, all these different private agencies that are out there that you can communicate with the community to show the kids, well, you know, there's some opportunity here. We have an Orangeville Rod and Gun Club that our chapter president 2 years ago is a member of. So we got involved with them, Northern Columbia County. And so there's a lot of different aspects as well to what you can do with it. That's for sure. Yep.
Hey, Doug, what are some SAE projects that you guys do related, or that your kids do related to wildlife?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Carol. I saw the chat come up there. We do a lot of, and John and Beth have this, and if they could push that out, that would be great. Who's interested? I provided them, and on the website, I didn't show that today, but the Game Commission has all the plans for woodworking for different animals, nesting sites, wood duck boxes, butterfly boxes, hibernation boxes. There's one for turtle platforms. So we have a lot of kids that are environmentally driven, and they have a lot of SAEs that are environmental and wildlife management SAEs. They're building habitats for these animals that are out there. So that brings up a great point as an SAE project, wildlife habitat development for sure. And the Game Commission has those wooden plans that they would use at the Howard Nursery out in Center County. That was where they build them. If you've ever gotten those kits, maybe you bought them or you've seen them or got them free, donated somehow. You could actually do those as shop projects. Bluebird boxes, we do that with our 9th graders all the time. Great learning curve, but if the kids have a shop at home and parents have material, wow, what a great project they could do remotely to get them back in that shop setting, even though that we're not right there with them every day. Most of us have gone through shop safety already for the year. And if they have a shop at home, mom and dad are probably okay with them using it. Wow, what a great project they could do for an SAE, but also potentially for a grade. So great idea. Yep. So that's kind of the thumbs we've done, Carol, from SAE side.
Carol, can I ask you a question quick? Sorry, about SAEs.
Yeah, go ahead.
When we used to do paper and or the Excel version of SAEs, Ron Frederick had a pretty good one going there for, conservation, natural resources. And this year is the first year since using the AET, just clicking in the AET quick here, that I've had a kid that wanted to do a wildlife, natural resources kind of project, which is fine. But I feel like I didn't think it was really set up very well on the AET. Anybody else have kids do that where either they're tracking what they find, kind of keeping a log type deal?
So Amy, you're talking like a wildlife observation journal, a wildlife habitat management journal type thing?
Yeah, so like the kid does hunt, and then he came up with that's what he wanted to do. So yeah, he's doing a natural survey of Pap's farm, he wrote, and the hunting place. And let me see, what did we set it up as? So we set it up as, the best I could find was like research experimental. Does that seem like what you'd put it under?
You could do that if you could do that if he's going to go hardcore research. I'm going to just jump in there before Carol takes over and explains that. But we had a kid by the name of Graham Roan who was a state star winner in wildlife management just a few years ago. 2013 maybe, and graduated from Penn State Wildlife and took a job with the Department of Natural Resources in Georgia. Wow, who would have thought? And spent a year down there with their management units and that type of thing, all based off of what he did in high school with exactly what you're talking about in wildlife
Mhm.
observation, habitat management. And just this past fall, he left Georgia to come back to Pennsylvania and is in Columbia County now. He's our Pheasants Forever specialist with NRCS. Wow, he's gone full circle with an SAE project, all based off because he was interested in wildlife. So, Carol, you want to take over?
Yeah, you could do it as research or you could do it as unpaid placement. You could also do it as foundational, but I would suggest, I'm looking at his account, because of, it looks like the work he's doing and the amount of hours he's putting in. I would go with unpaid placement and then just have him do the journal entries, because he's not gonna, the way he has it set up, he's just doing an observation and survey of his PAPS farm. Yeah, just have him journal and keep track of the things he finds and the things he identifies. And he could, if he has any documents, like some of this information that Doug showed us, some of the ID stuff, he could upload that, pictures of those things in his portfolio. And then eventually those could flow into an award or a degree application.
Okay. Like I said, when I was having him like help him set it up, I thought, it didn't seem like real streamlined for natural resources. That's all I'm saying. But I don't know if other people have found that or you just figure it out and make it work.
It's just a different mindset than what we used to use. So,
Yeah.
So yeah, call it unpaid placement and then go forward with the journal. And yeah,
Okay. Thanks.
Quick comment. I know we're reaching the end of our scheduled time, which is fine by me, but I know other people have other obligations. But just to piggyback some of the comments made, and unfortunately, this is pretty much geared to our younger bucks on the call today. Just to kind of help hone your and craft your teacher mentality and mindset. I really appreciated that Doug and Carol and Amy have touched on the fact of blending different content areas with assignments and curriculum and whatnot, because but you really got to think, you really got to break out of the school mode and think practical, real world mode. Doesn't matter if you're preparing kids to go right to the workforce or to college, the ultimate goal is still a job at the end of the road. And whether a kid learns all that they can about wildlife and whitetail deer management and habitat and threats and everything else, let's say their ultimate goal is to go work for the Game Commission, be a field technician or something like that. Yeah, the wildlife stuff is critical, but it's also quite embarrassing to get hired by the Pennsylvania Game Commission, say, yeah, I know there's know about the whitetail deer, but I don't know how to use a reciprocating saw or a circular saw or an impact drill to go out and build the infrastructure that the Game Commission supports. So anytime you can blend that mechanical side of things with wildlife, with forest management, with natural resource management, with aquatics, because there's applications of mechanics in almost everything. So if you come up with an assignment or a project or an activity that lets them apply their wildlife, forestry, natural resource knowledge, but also continue to develop that mechanical aptitude and ability and skill, that's the best of both worlds, because lots of jobs like to pay people to do things, not just know things, but to do things. So they got to know how to do things as well. That's my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, you're really good, John, on that, because a lot of the guys that work out the Howard Nursery, yeah, they work for the Game Commission, but they're building habitat. That's what they're building. They're building wood duck boxes, which is a project we do. They're building bluebird boxes to make for kits to put out to Blue Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or FFA chapters or whoever, or just for the general public or their own. They're building butterfly hibernation boxes, which we do as part of our pollinators unit. what we try to do, because we're an ag mechanics CIP, but also related sciences CIP, this is for the young kids as well that are on the call today. We try to relate a wood project that relates to wildlife in everything we do. So wood duck boxes, bluebird boxes, butterfly boxes, American robin nest boxes, turtle platforms, on and on and on. The things that we've done relate to that. And you don't have to recreate this project plan, this bill of materials. It's already done for you. The Game Commission has done all that. And once you go to the Game Commission's website, there's a thing called Staying at Home Learning underneath education. You guys don't have to look at it now, but on your own, it shows you all the different plans for all of these. They're already done. It's perfect. And it really works well to what Amy and Carol's talking about with an SAE project. Wow, so you've gone totally from woodworking to an applied idea that John talked about to an SAE to a degree. Wow, that's total program. That's the 3-circle model. That's the 3-circle model right there, period. Yep. So hopefully you guys got a little bit out of today. There's a lot of information out there, but sometimes we just don't know where to go get it. So that's kind of what we looked at, from films to videos to what kids can do. And it doesn't have to be you doing all the lecture. I tell you, to be honest with you, I sat with our principal on a Zoom the other day, and our principal is a 2001 Central Columbia graduate. Went down to South Carolina, was down there for about a few years, and came back. And he said, wow, this remote learning has been great professional development for teachers, isn't it? And I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of things that I've done for a long time that have worked, but man, I'm rethinking how I'm going to do some things come fall when I get back into some of these other classes that I'm not in right now, like that forest and wildlife science class first semester. I'm going to do that thing totally different than what I've ever done before, because I've been able to find a lot of different resources out there because of sessions like this. So.
Okay, well, we are a couple minutes over our scheduled time, which is, again, no problem. But I don't want to keep you any longer than you want to be. So are there any closing thoughts, questions, problems that you'd like to pose?
Can I ask one more question? Just like
Go ahead.
30, just really quick. Do any of you guys who are currently in the classroom, do you guys have kids who are doing SAE projects that are not recorded in AET?
No.
Okay.
No.
Amy, do you?
Can you say that one more time? Sorry, I was reading what you wrote in the chat.
That's okay. Do you have any students who are completing SAE projects that are not recorded in AET?
No, I make them all record them in AET.
Okay, we're looking at ways of collecting data and making sure that the data we're getting out of AET is complete. And that's kind of for the Ag Ed Commission. So that's, thank you.
Yeah, Carol, we, at Central Columbia, everybody that got an SAEs in AET that they have one. So.
Okay, very good. Thanks.
Hey, Mary's still on here? Is Mary still on the call?
Yes. Yep.
Mary, any of that stuff we're going to be able to use maybe down the road for you, or maybe in
For
file
sure.
lines or anything?
For sure. That was very, very helpful. Thanks for all that stuff.
All I can tell you folks is that I wish somebody, when I was at your stage, had shared everything that Doug just shared with all of us, because it would have saved me a world of work.
Yeah. You kept saying about don't reinvent the wheel, and this is definitely working not to reinvent the wheel and use stuff that's already out there, because there's so many great resources that I'm thankful that you're bringing to our attention. So that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, that's why I emailed you last night. I thought there was some stuff on there that you might be able to use, and I didn't want you to miss it. But I think next week, like we talked with Beth and John, I think next week we'll look at some stuff dealing with aquatics in the morning. If that, we'll relate to bio and things of those sorts as well. And we'll kind of look at the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission's website and then kind of go from there and give you some more resources that deals with aquatics. And then we'll kind of move on. Would that be okay or no? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Brandon, is that going to fit for you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking, I wish I would have had all these resources before student teaching, but glad I have it now.
Well, they were there. We just didn't know where to find them, right? We just didn't know where they were. But I think the game commission, these commissions and agencies are really starting to, like we said last week, starting to crank it up a little bit, on their side too. That they know that they're responsible for us to portray what they do. Like I talk to our game commission guys all the time. We have this thing called Outdoor Venture Camp that we do with our 3rd through 6th graders. Our ag program does with our FFA chapter each summer at our Conservation District's Environmental Center in Light Street, Pennsylvania. And it's a combination between our FFA chapter and the Conservation District coming together to put this program on for 50 3rd through 6th graders free of charge, 2 days of full days, 2 8-hour days, 16 hours of environmental education that they don't pay a thing for. But what a great feeder program into our program. Kids that are from Central Columbia are the only ones invited because it's in our district. And that may be wrong, but we may look at venturing that out since we're transferring some kids locally. But I think it's a way for our kids to do some presenting, FFA kids do some presenting as well, right? And it's a way for them to build confidence because like in the Envirothon, if they do the oral component, at the state level, they have to present to a panel of judges. Wow. How about FFA speech? FFA speeches that come out, of these things. So there's a lot of things like John was saying. It's not just about, hey, here's a classroom, here's a projector, here's our curriculum. It's way more than that. So as you guys learn the 3-circle model, I kind of wanted to show you that a little bit today. So, yep.
Okay, another home run session. I guess I'll put out final call for questions, comments, or concerns, or anything for the good of the group. Absolutely, it's our pleasure.
I have a question for Doug, not necessarily has to be recorded, I guess, but about his program in general. You were talking about the environmental science class, and that's based solely on the Envirothon. Is that correct?
When we went to our Act 48 committee 12 years ago, one of the things that we were struggling with at that time were the PSSA exams at the high school level, and now at the Keystone exams at the high school level, but also with the PSSA scores in the middle school. So Jen Fisher, which Jen, our middle school teacher, has had redesigned her whole middle school curriculum in one aspect of science to be environmental science, because we have a middle school Envirothon here in the Susquehanna Valley. So they compete in that. But she teaches a course at the middle school level based off the middle school Envirothon, but based off of the Envirothon itself, which is a great feeder program into our program. So let's go back to that 12 years, our Act 48 committee. Mr. C. Schultz, myself, which at that time we believed, and you heard me say this before, believed it had been team teaching. So there's only a couple groups that even team teach yet anymore. Myself and Kirk C. Schultz in bio, Kurt Turner and another bio teacher, Greg Lawbaugh, team teach animal science. Our engineering tech guys team teach with a physics teacher in physics. So we do all that. Now we're about the only groups that really do that, but we know it works and our district is sold on it from a career pathway side. So what we did is we took the state standards and matched them against the Envirothon. And then the Envirothon produced those state standards. We went to the Curriculum Development Council here at Central Columbia and sold it 12 years ago to say, listen, our scores aren't very good in the Keystones, at that time PSSAs. They aren't very good in the middle school either. And we have a lot of kids interested in this thing as a career. We want to present this class and to touch on all those bases and make it a science credit. So myself having an Ag 9 through 12 certification, a K through 12 environmental ed, and a 7 to 12 general science, even if Kirk C. Schultz, our bio teacher, wasn't there, we're still okay certifiably to be able to do that by myself. I don't do it though, because I want him to add the bio side of this. And that's kind of why I wanted Mary on today, because I wanted her to see the bio side of this a little bit, how that comes into play. Just because I think having a bio teacher there gets you also maybe different kids in your ag program. And you and Sarah Beth have done a great job of that up there. So it just gives you those aspects to it a little bit. So that's why we did it that way. And it is basically solely on the 5 categories of the Envirothon. We spend 36 days on each topic. It goes by really quick.
So when you do your, when they take that environmental science class, they take that at the high school level with you, right?
Yep.
Okay, and then you do that forest science for 9 weeks, and then you do wildlife for 9 weeks. That's totally separate from the environmental science, or combined together?
Nope, that's a totally different class. Totally different class first semester, usually 8th period. I picked the end of the day because in the fall, if we go out and do tree ID or lumber cruising or timber cruising, it's dry. It's not wet outside. You know, I tried it a couple years, first thing out of the chute, and the kids' shoes are wet all day and they have to change. It was ugly. So I just like, you know what we're going to do, we're going to put it at the end of the day. It's dry, it's good. The weather's usually fine. In the fall, it gives them out and about. And it's totally different class. And I started that 29 years ago. That was purposefully to get different types of kids exposed to our ag program. That's the reason that class was put in play. When I got there, when I got here, I was given 3 years to turn this program around. If it wasn't turned around, it's being eliminated, period. So you talk about putting your back up against the wall, taking your first job, Brandon, Mary, put yourself in that boat. And I knew what I was doing because I came from a program that was together. Dave Seinfeld, student taught at that program. And I knew I've lived this. This all I've done. So I knew what I was doing, but it was a challenge. It was a challenge, but we got it right. We're good. So yeah. So that's what we do, Dave. Yep.
Do you have block?
Nope. We are in a 8-period day, 46-minute periods. The forest science class is going to be more based off of every Pennsylvanian owns 26 acres. And how do I manage it to get a profit off of it? It actually goes off of a class I had at Penn State called Forestry 209. I don't know if that class exists anymore. Does it exist still? Forestry 209? All right. That was a great class. I had it for a semester, and it was about just how does a small woodland owner make profit off that 26 acres? And instead of just paying taxes and, oh, by the way, I'll cut a tree down once in a while. Of course, I come from a family that owns a lot of property in McKean County, 672 acres. So we know a few things about trees. So it gives you those aspects as well, kind of what we're talking about. But that's what that class basically is. So we're cruising timber, grading lumber. We wouldn't do that in environmental science. It's a different aspect to it. We talk about forestry tools. I take them through chainsaw certification, chainsaw safety. I bring in a wood miser. They learn about logging, the logging industry, lumbering, lumber mills. Our library aide, her husband has a portable sawmill. So he brings it in every year and we spend the day cutting lumber. It's great. Kids love it. Yep. And then the logs that he brings in, we keep, and then the engineering side, they dry them out. They naturally dry them, and then we use the lumber the next year. We got like $2,000 worth of lumber this past year for nothing. So again, John talked about total program, tight budgets, just getting started as a young teacher. Wow, $2,000 worth of material. I can use it. I have nothing on my pocket, or ain't nothing out of the school's pocket. So, and there's always people out there willing to do that for you. So, yep. And then the wildlife side is if they, like you said, Dave, are going to be a game warden. Somebody that works for the Game Commission. John talked about that as well. One of our game wardens here in Columbia County is a former graduate of our program, Justin Foss. He's a graduate of our program. He's now one of our wildlife game wardens here. What a great way to have one of your former kids come in and speak to kids and say, listen, what they're telling you is true. I lived it. Now I'm truly living it. So, and you guys, Mary and Brandon, you guys are just getting started. You'll develop that over time the way you need to. It'll be fun. So, Dave and I have been around a while. So that's all.
And Dave, I've said it on previous sessions to everybody, actually, but I keep saying I'm going to share this, and I haven't done it yet. I have it saved in my Facebook, but Van Wagner, teacher at Lewisburg High School, I believe went
Yep.
through Danville's program when Paul Heasley taught there.
Correct.
He has industry experience in logging and forest resources. He did a fantastic YouTube video. He does a lot of, I mean, some of them are just him singing, but others are him actually educating and teaching. And he does a fantastic job. He did a really nicely edited 30-minute video with specifically for his environmental natural resource classes at Lewisburg. But he put it out on Facebook, and I watched it. It's like 38 minutes edited. So it's a class period. Doug said they're recommended or, being pushed to do 30 minutes of instruction with their kids per day during this online instructional period. And Van just does it's in his backyard on his own land, does a superb job of just talking to the camera about how he owns some land. He owns a woodlot. And again, rather than just pay taxes on it, how he makes some additional summer income, harvesting some of his own timber, and walks the kids through how he decides which tree he's going to cut, which trees he's going to leave, how he anticipates filling a truck so that it ends up being worth his time and money, his anticipated income based off the lumber he cuts, all squeezed into a 38-minute session. So this is the right moment. I'll include that link in the follow-up email here, because I really think he did a really good job of it.
Van does a lot of stuff on folk heritage. He did some things with our Envirothon as the fun station. We have a fun station, the Susquehanna Valley Envirothon. He's in that same regional Envirothon that I am over at Lewisburg. So he did some things on the coal industry, the iron furnacing industry. He does a lot of folklore type stuff. He's a big singer. He was at the State Envirothon a couple years ago, did things on the coal mining industry and those types of things. So he's big into folk and heritage type stuff. So he's got some stuff out there. Yep.
I had Van as a student teacher at Kutztown. I believe the year prior or year after, I had Miss Beth Matthey as a student teacher at Kutztown.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Okay. Well, there's Beth. You're muted.
And after the student teaching experiences.
Okay, well, we're closing in here on the 30-minute mark after our scheduled time. This was a fantastic session. Thank you to everybody for joining and making it so. You can expect a follow-up email from me with some of the documents and worksheets that Doug has shared with Beth and I to go along with some of the resources that we looked at today through the Envirothon and PA Game Commission website. So I guess at this time, if there's no other questions, thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your days.
John, you just want to stay on for a second?
Yeah, yep.